Chapter 4. The old man did not have much to say other than congratulations and good luck. So it was off to the little passenger terminal to wait to catch the contracted 747 to take me back to the States along with all the others on their way home. We were the second leg of the trip that originated in the UAE, so there were a lot of sailors heading home who deplaned to get some time in Kuwait, and a few Marines heading back early for one reason or another. We would be stopping in Germany to fill the rest of the plane with airmen and soldiers. Then back to Andrews Air Force Base, where I would deplane. While dragging my sea bag to the terminal, I realized I had not called my wife with the news. The fact that she was an afterthought should have been a tell that something was up with our relationship. But I figured I still needed to try. I went to one of the payphones lined up outside the terminal, busted out my ATT International card, and did the math. 9 p.m. at night in California, she should be up. The phone in our apartment rang and rang. Finally, the answering service picked up. It was Janice's voice.
You know what to do.
That was new. Janice, it's Jack. I got selected for a good deal, graduate school in Singapore. I'm headed back to D.C. to start Mandarin refresher training. The Freedom Bird stops in Frankfurt in around 8 hours. I will try to call you tomorrow morning, your time. Love you. I was not sure how she was going to take this news. She was fond of the beach bunny life of SoCal, and Singapore is Africa hot and urban. Also, we would be rotating a year early after a stint in D.C., which would not be a thrill to her either. There would soon be trouble, and being unable to talk to her gave me unease. But I had to put that one out of my mind and shuffle up the long outside stairway the ground crew pushed to the door of the 747, 3 stories up there. I usually fall asleep on the plane as the thing taxis to the end of the runway. This flight was no different. I had downloaded some songs onto a newfangled MP3 player, but after the first strains of The Coors, I was dead asleep, head lolling straight down, as I could tell by the pain in the back of my neck when I woke up somewhere over Turkey. I tried calling again from Frankfurt, but got the same obnoxious message on the answering service. It was Tuesday afternoon when we landed in Andrews, and I tried again. This time, she picked up.
I am sorry, darling. I stayed at Anne's house. We were talking and drank a bottle of wine, and I crashed there for the evening.
Leave aside any discussion about whether adult women have sleepovers with each other. I decided to take it at face value. Well, I'm in D.C. I will get a room and check in with this program I'm in and see what it entails. Maybe you can join me in D.C. while I'm at school. There was hesitation on her end. Janice, are you still there?
Sorry. There is just so much to think about. My job and leaving SoCal.
I'm not sure that any actual natives of Southern California called the place SoCal, but she had seen or heard the word somewhere, and now that is what she told everyone is where we lived.
I mean, we are going to have to move to Shanghai, so maybe it would be best for me to just stay here until we have to leave.
Singapore.
I am sorry, darling, what?
We are moving to Singapore, not Shanghai. You're going to like Singapore a lot more than China.
Oh, you know I can't keep those places straight. But anywhere you go, I go, right?
Which was ironic for someone to say who refused to travel inside her own country to see her husband. But I let it go. One thing I have learned is that there is nothing to be gained from arguing with Janice. She had, and probably still has, a peculiar way of arguing. She would alternately pretend not to understand or even to listen. I likened it to throwing punches against an opponent who covers up so well that you never get a shot in, so that, eventually, you just give up. But then, unexpectedly, she will, at a time of her own choosing, be able to provide a verbatim recounting of the discussion like some kind of electronic toy parrot, with accompanying criticisms, very disconcerting. So I quickly learned that I would prefer not to lay myself open for that. In retrospect, it was probably not the healthiest way to grow a marriage, but sometimes the easy way is just, well, easier. I agreed and told her I was tired and would call tomorrow once I knew more. There was a USO at the passenger terminal, so I asked a friendly retired Air Force guy at the reception desk to suggest a hotel near the Pentagon and some ground transportation to get me there. He arranged everything, then took the opportunity to tell me about his experience at the Pentagon. I will condense it. The most painful and unhappy 3 years he ever spent. But he was sure it would be better for me. Well, I learned there was a bus for active duty military that ran from Andrews literally to the bus stop at the Pentagon for free. Not having anywhere else to be, I hopped on with my fellow stragglers and rode along on the 45-minute drive to the world's largest, most enormous office building. I got off and Hank, my Air Force retiree friend at the USO, was true to his word that the Holiday Inn would have a shuttle bus waiting for me there at the bus stop to whisk me to my hotel. The hotel was in walking distance of the Pentagon. That is, if I was not lugging 2 sea bags full of trash, as my XO had put it. I checked in and went straight down to the bar, figuring I would take on board a couple of gins and tonic, and stay up until the standard sleeping time to be fresh and ready for the dreadful Pentagon that still apparently haunted Hank's dreams. Mission accomplished. I woke up at 0600, 6 a.m. for you non-military types, and dug my Alpha uniform out of the sea bag. The Alpha uniform is the green business suit that Marines wear when reporting to a new command. I had to press it out since it looked like a wrinkle bomb had exploded in my luggage, but I got myself squared away. I decided to have breakfast at the hotel, and afterwards, I made my first big mistake at this duty station. I walked to the Pentagon. Even in the summer weight trousers, walking in a wool suit in Washington, D.C. during the summer is, at best, ill-advised. I was a drenched wreck stumbling through the humid swamp. Admittedly, a drained, paved-over swamp, but still, a humid swamp surrounding the Pentagon. I made it to the front door of the Pentagon, but was turned away by a uniformed police officer with a shoulder patch that said, Pentagon Police, who was standing guard. In my mind, I was thinking, so there are civilian police patrolling the Puzzle Palace? I guess so. I kept my eyes from rolling, although it was a real struggle. I have learned there are 3 groups in the military not to antagonize. Medics. I've always figured I did not want an angry phlebotomist sticking me with a needle. The folks at the chow hall, their jobs are thankless even when the food is good, and it is a short step to make institutional food terrible, so I'm always smiles and politeness when I'm pushing my tray along. And MPs. So, I listened carefully to his directions since I was uncleared, but not unclean in the biblical sense, so far as I knew, even though I looked like a wet bag of donuts in my damp Alpha uniform. I walked around the building to look for an opening that I, one of the uncleared, could use. I had to pass 2 sides of the 5-sided building until I got to the middle of the 3rd side that happened to be opposite the bus stop where I had gotten off last night. Then I found the down escalator that had a helpful sign above it with the words, Uncleared personnel / visitor / those awaiting escorts. That was me. I went in the door and found one of those Disneyland-style queues, marked off with stanchions and fabric ropes that wound back and forth in front of what looked like bank tellers, complete with bulletproof glass and those little metal drawers the teller could push in and pull back. At the start of that line, a sign said, Uncleared uniformed military / government civilians. There was a door off to the right that said, Visitors. The helpful civilian MP had told me to get in line, which seemed right since the queue was full of military types in various uniforms, with a sprinkling of civilians in business attire. Everyone walking through the door looked like tourists. I finally got to one of the windows, put my military ID in the drawer, and watched impassively while the teller tapped away on the keyboard with the eraser end of a pencil held by her thumb against her palm. She had fingernails that looked 3 inches long, painted a purplish color. Mauve may be what the interior designers call it. A color that matched a ribbon weaved into her dreadlocks. She pointed her pencil at an angle through the window toward my right hip. "Input your pen." I was startled by the direction, then realized there was a little keypad that looked like push buttons on a phone sitting on the counter. I tapped in my personal ID number, which went with the military ID. She tip-tapped some more with her pencil, watched her screen, and seemed satisfied. She grabbed a blue badge with a white V and the words in white across the bottom, "No escort required." Dragon Claws flipped the badge into the drawer and pushed the contraption out toward me. "Welcome to the Pentagon. Wear your badge above your waist and enter through the doors on your right." It could have been a more welcoming greeting, but it was good enough. I now knew how to get in the building and not to try to clip the badge on my trouser cuff. Armed with all that knowledge, in I went. I looked at the notebook where I had written the room number, 5 Bravo 531, which was the office number of the Joint International Education Programs Office. The Pentagon has 5 sides and 5 rings of offices in a 5-story building with 10 corridors from the middle like spokes on a wheel. 5 Bravo 531 meant I was looking for some office on the 5th floor, B ring, next to the A ring where all the generals had an office. Since the Joint International Education Programs Office had a general of their own, they got an office near the center. They say no 2 points of the Pentagon are any more than 7 minutes from each other. Maybe that is true if you know where you're going, and don't wander down a sensitive corridor with an armed sentry in the Navy crackerjack uniform outside one of the doors, to you non-Marines, who quizzes you for a couple of minutes about why you were there with a lousy V badge. He was a petty officer who liberally sprinkled sirs into his conversation, like they were a shortened version of a-hole. Even though I could sense his disrespect, I have learned that there is no point arguing with an armed sentry or pulling rank and demanding to see the sergeant of the guard. Duty master of arms. So I made my apologetic retreat. About 15 minutes later, I finally arrived at 5 Bravo 531. A placard bearing that inscription was next to the door with no sentry. A sign on the door said, "Do not knock. Ring buzzer to your right and await instructions." I rang the buzzer and stared at the little speaker as the traffic in the corridor passed behind my back. I momentarily imagined that they were laughing up their sleeves about the V-badge captain having to wait in the hallway while someone dithered in the office. Finally, a feminine voice came through the speaker.
"Joint Education, may I help you?"
Captain Stern reporting as ordered.
"Very well, Captain. The door is unlocked."
I did not hear anything click, but I had great confidence this was not some kind of practical joke. I pulled the now unlocked door open, went in, and found a rabbit warren of desks, partitioned from each other by 6-foot-high panels covered in what looked like gray carpet. This is the end of Chapter 4, Part 1.